Today we're going to be talking about music, and I had a few interesting facts about music and sound anyways, that just to get you thinking about it. Sound travels 4 times faster in water, which I find pretty interesting. It takes 12 days for sound to come from here to the moon. It takes 12 days to travel. Think about the aspect of it takes light 8 minutes to get from the sun to here. It takes 12 days for sound to travel from here to the moon. There is an actual phobia of music. It's called melophobia, the fear of music. Listening to music is one of the few activities that actually utilizes 100% of your brain. It's one of the few activities. And so think about that next time you're listening to music. And to all my metalhead friends out there, termites chew twice as fast when they listen to heavy metal music. They can chew twice as fast when they listen to heavy metal music. So if you ever feel like getting something done during the day, there you go. It gets your heart rate up. And music actually does manipulate our bodies. It's a physical aspect. And so the type of music you listen to can actually change your heartbeat and rhythm. And so a lot of people would actually say heavy metal music is bad for you because it pushes your heartbeat to a different beat. But for me, that just gets you pumped, right? Who doesn't? Your heartbeat changes when you play sports and stuff. That's not bad for you. But anyways, as we get into music, I like all different types of music, just to say that, not just metal. I'm not like Jack Black from School of Rock. When he's asking the kids, what kind of music do you like? One of the kids says, Puff Daddy, and he says, wrong. I think that's a little too far to say wrong. The only type of wrong music I might say would be pop country. But I wouldn't say that. If you like pop country, that's fair. You can like it. I would never say that's wrong. But anyways, talking about music, first let's talk about the history of music. We actually don't know when it started or where it came from. It predates any written accounts. Music has been a part of us as human beings since we can remember. They've found along with ancient tools, they've found ancient instruments. They've found people have carved out of bones, different flutes and things like that. So it predates anything we can talk about. And as we go from the history of music into what we do know about music, we kind of get into the Bible times of the music. I'm going to be speeding through some stuff here because I want to listen to the rest of the artists. So yeah, it's going to be a short sermon anyways. Okay, history of music, get that out of the way. Music in the Bible comes from David. Most of these psalms come from David. And a lot of us think of David as this big, great warrior. If you grew up in the church, you'd understand David and Goliath. How many people have not heard the story of David and Goliath? Put up your hands if you've never heard that story. Yeah, everybody knows David and Goliath. But what a lot of us don't know is how David actually got into the scene. And it was because of his music. And if you do have a Bible, you could turn to 1 Samuel chapter 16. I'm going to start in verse 14. And there's a few interesting things here that I might not have time to get into. But we're going to start at verse 14. Now the Spirit of the Lord had departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord tormented him. Saul's attendant said to him, "See, an evil spirit from God is tormenting you. Let our Lord command his servants here to search for someone who can play the lyre. He will play when the evil spirit from God comes on you, and you will feel better." So Saul said to his attendants, "Find someone who plays well and bring him to me." One of the servants answered, "I have seen a son of Jesse of Bethlehem who knows how to play the lyre. He is a brave man and a warrior. He speaks well and is a fine-looking man, and the Lord is with him." Then Saul sent messengers to Jesse and said, "Send me your son David, who is with the sheep." So Jesse took a donkey loaded with bread, a skin of wine, and a young goat, and sent them with him, his son, David, to Saul. David came to Saul and entered his service. Saul liked him very much, and David became one of his armor bearers. Then Saul sent word to Jesse, saying, "Allow David to remain in my service, for I am pleased with him." Whenever the Spirit from God came on Saul, David would take up his lyre and play. Then relief would come to Saul. He would feel better, and the evil spirit would leave him. Now, I'm not going to touch on the theological implications that the evil spirit comes from God. That would take an entire sermon there. So I'm just going to skip that. If you find that interesting as I do, maybe you'll research it later. But what I am going to talk about is the healing side of the music. And when we feel down, when we get depressed or upset or angry, music is actually, most of us, I think you could agree with me, music is where you turn to. Most of us just plug our headphones in, but we've got a king here who can't do that, so he sends for the best musicians, right? This is how it used to work. You had to bring up musicians. And it was a healing power. And what we don't think about today is the fact that God is with the music, and that's how it was seen. Musicians back then were actually considered prophets. I don't know if you knew that. But if we look at 1 Chronicles, if you have 1 Chronicles chapter 25, I'm going to start right at the beginning. David, so this is the same David, together with his commanders of the army, set apart some of the sons of Asaph, Herman and Jeduthun, for the ministry of prophesying, accompanied by harps, lyres, and cymbals. Here's a list of men who perform the service. He set aside men to play music for the ministry of prophesying. A lot of us don't think about prophecy linked to music. And how many prophecies did Jesus fulfill? Does anybody know from the Old Testament? 144? 144 or something like that. Okay, so Jesus fulfilled like 144 prophecies that were mentioned about him. 92 of them come from the Psalms. They refer to David as the prophet David, and his songs, when you read the Psalms, they were considered prophecy. I don't know if anybody else knew that, but musicians at this time were considered prophets. There was actually a school set aside by Samuel, Samuel is the prophet who brought David up to be king. He had a school of prophets for music. There was a school set aside for musicians and prophecy. A lot of us don't really understand that, but music was seen as a higher level of communication. It was a way to connect to God that we don't really quite understand. Not just the words, but the music as well. What is a prophet? A prophet is somebody who speaks for God. I would define a prophet as somebody who's in tune with God. And I would say that music is that in-tuneness. We can be in tune with God. Most of us would agree that words are higher than God. We can't define God in words, can we? I think music actually touches a little bit higher. We can define God through music a little bit better. Personally, I think that. As I'm going to share my song, I'm going to play it. I'm not a musician. I'm not a musician. I'm not a guitarist. I guess, well, most people would say drummers aren't musicians, but I think I'm a musician anyways. Yeah, I think so, but I actually met a pro musician. I went to a concert with my mom and her aunt, and she was friends with the bassist. My aunt was friends with the bassist. And my aunt said, "Oh, Nathan's a musician too." And he said, "Oh, what instrument do you play?" And I said, "Drums." And he's like, "Oh yeah." And I could just see it in his face. Most musicians, they think drummers, yeah, whatever, right? But I think I'm a musician anyways. But anyways, I'm going to share that in a minute. But music as prophecy is not just for the Christian religion either. I pulled out an example from the Adi Granth, which is the Sikh scriptures, and their great prophet, Baba Nanak, he traveled around with a man named Mardana, and they played songs for people. And I'm not going to read it, but from the scriptures, they meet a king, and he hears a song, and he says, "This man came from God." Instantly, it was the song brought him, and he said, "This man comes from God." And it's the same thing with the Bible, with the Psalms. Music connects us to God in that way. And so for me, music in my life, it's been huge. I started playing drums when I was 15. And so when we started, my buddy, he played guitar, and he was like, "Okay, in 3 months, we're going to have a battle of the bands at school. I want to put a band together." And I was like, "I'm in. I'm going to play drums." I've never played anything ever. And so he had a little drum kit. So we practiced for 3 months. Every day after school, we were practicing. And we played our first concert. And I actually pulled out the video. My dad filmed it. And I watched it with Leah. And she's just laughing because I'm just this little kid. And you could see how nervous I was. I mean, I've played a million shows since then. But I won't forget my first show. And then I asked my mom for a drum kit for that birthday. She told me only if I didn't get a tattoo until I was, 21? I almost lasted to 21. I think I was 19 or 20 when I got my first one, but anyways, I had to hide it for about a year. But yeah, I mean, music was really important to me growing up, and I loved the drums, and I loved everything about it, and it's always brought me to that level when you're feeling down or you have these emotions, you need to turn somewhere, and I think music's a great way to do that. I think of two things with music. I think it brings us connection, and it brings us inspiration, and I think those two things are imperative in our society. We need those things. If you're like me and you look outside and you see that there's a level of connection missing with us within our communities, I think music is something that could bring us back to that, and I hope we can do that. When I listen to music, I mostly listen to secular music. I'm not really huge on Christian music. For me, it doesn't really get me where I need to be. We've been talking about the Psalms, how a lot of them are sad songs, or a lot of them are angry songs. The whole Bible isn't all about how great God is. A lot of it's about our struggles and getting through those struggles. And so for me, I personally, my walk with God has been a struggle. I live in faith with God and doubt in God often. I struggle with these two things. When the outside world is always telling you there's no way there could be such a thing, and you're just kind of battling back. But I think doubt in God is important, and I actually pulled out a quote from Rob Bell. Some people here might not like him, but anyways, here's a quote that I liked. Take faith, for example. For many people in our world, the opposite of faith is doubt. The goal then within this understanding is to eliminate doubt. But faith and doubt aren't opposites. Doubt is often a sign that your faith has a pulse, that it's alone and well and exploring and searching. Faith and doubt aren't opposites. They are, as it turns out, excellent dance partners. And that's kind of the way I see it when, especially within secular music, it's this, people are pouring out their emotions, and that's what I'm connecting to. I have to hear real emotions coming out of the songs for me to connect to it. And a lot of times I live in a space where I'm feeling down, or I live in doubt, and that's what those songs do. And as Bradley has said before, if somebody's feeling down, you don't recommend this song that everything's good and everything should be good. What that song does is it connects you to that person. It makes you feel okay about living in that state. If somebody is singing about how hard life is, and your life is hard, that's what that's doing. It's connecting you to them. There's a level of connection in that we can't quite understand. And that's what it does for me. And it inspires. It should inspire, and music does that. And there's a physical reaction to listening to music. All of us should have felt goosebumps listening to music before. A connection to that music, not just the words, but the music. And it should bring up emotions. It should inspire us to do great things. I was going to read Psalm 44, but for ease of time, as I've been cutting tons of stuff because I want to hear the musicians come up, I'm going to read a psalm that I wrote actually a few years ago. And maybe you can connect to this poem as well. But it must have been about 2 years ago I wrote this. And I just decided to share it because we've been talking about Psalms. And if you've written poetry and Psalms, I encourage you to share it, just as music should be shared. I think our thoughts on God and our doubts and our fears and our depression should be shared with one another. And a lot of times we'll find out that you're not alone in that. And so I'm just going to read it. And I've never read it out loud, but anyways. You see me when I don't see you. You hear me when I close off all else. You're there when I'm not even here. I sense you but don't see you. I long for you but can't find you. Where have you gone, O God? Hear me when my heart breaks. Heal me when emotions crumble. Pick me up when I fall down. When I'm alone, don't abandon me. When I turn to you, do not turn away. I ask but I do not do. You yearn for me but I ignore. You speak to me but I do not listen. My heart is hardened from the evil of this world. My mind wanders through the catalog of flesh and desire. I ask and you hear me. You ask and I procrastinate. When, God, will I follow you? When will I obey you? If not now, tomorrow? In a month? In a year? The merry-go-round of shame brings me to this moment over and over and over. Only you can break this cycle. I am too weak, corrupted by the ways of the world, eaten up by Satan's influencers, consumed by the media, and wasted by the years of ignorance. I'm alone even when I'm not. I'm forsaken even though you take me back. I'm guilty of conscious sin. I am empty and need filling. Spirit, enter my life, follow me, guide me, influence and lead. Cover, protect, endure forever. Pick up the ruins of my shattered life. Start with the cornerstone. Fill my walls with joy. May peace flow from these windows. May these doors accept all who enter them. You hear me, God, though I don't speak. You listen, God, though I don't pray. You heal me, though I am not ill. You love me, God, even though I do not love myself. Rise, Prince of Peace. Let your kingdom come.